Whatever happened to Franck Muller? Hi everyone and welcome to Shaluso, and today, yes, we are going to be talking about Franck Muller. They used to be one of the hottest, if not the hottest brand in the market for quite some time in the early 2000s, and today I'm going to be looking about why they were so expensive and why they still are. But before I get into that, I want to give a shout out to Watches Market Dubai for lending in the Franck Muller crazy hours that I'm going to be featuring throughout this video, so make sure you check out their links in the description. So Franck Muller, they used to be one of the hottest brands out there, and they're still around, but they definitely don't have their same sort of glory. But what they do still have is a hefty price tag, and I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons as to why they are expensive. First off, Franck Muller has a strong history by it, but unlike other watchmakers, when you talk history where you're talking like innovations in first, or you're talking hundreds of years of history, Franck Muller's history is much more recent. Specifically, it dates back to about the 80s. In the 80s, Franck Muller made a name for himself restoring Patek Philippe's. He made his own tourbillon in 1986, at a time when companies like Patek Philippe weren't even making tourbillons. So he really made a name for himself as an expert in complications, in high horology, working directly with Patek Philippe, as well as making custom one-offs. One of the best examples is he made his own Rolex perpetual calendar in the case of a Datejust. Rumor has it Jay-Z has that watch. So in that sense, it's very traditional in what we normally think of as today's independent watchmakers. A relationship with Patek Philippe, making a name for themselves, working with high complications and high standards, and then forming their own brand. But where Franck Muller's story differs is that he made a name for himself not just in making high quality watches, but in being the watchmaker for celebrities. And this was well before he even started getting well known in hip hop, which I'll talk about in a second. His watches were gracing the wrists of Elton John, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. Gianni Versace was rumored to have bought 20 Franck Mullers in one purchase. So needless to say, he was already getting a lot of attention from the celebrity world, and that ended up forming the foundation for its iconic status. But more than just being a hyped watchmaker, what he did is he made independent watchmaking cool. Companies like Roger Dubuis, F.P. Journe, Richard Mille wouldn't in any way exist to the level that they did and have the level of success that they did if it wasn't for Franck Muller. Because what he did is he made independent watchmaking cool. At the time, you need to remember that everyone was using outsourced movements, but what he was doing with these movements, the complications he was adding, they were practical in cases like the Master Banker, but also they were fun. Something like the Crazy Hours was the exemplification of just entertaining. You don't need it, but we don't need watches to begin with. So he was setting those sorts of trends. And design-wise also, he was a lot more audacious. At a time where companies were simply looking to the past, he was already looking to the future and making things interesting, colorful, vibrant. It was very reflective of the time, and it played a big role in what would help him attain his real success in the watch market, and that is Franck Muller's relationship with hip-hop. It's no secret by now that when a rapper mentions your brand, it helps business. If you look at today's hot watches, Patek Philippe's, Richard Mille's, Rolex, all of those are featured in rap lyrics. You know a watch is hot when it's being featured in rap lyrics, and Franck Muller was one of the first ones to really have that impact, but also to embrace it. One of the first appearances of Franck Muller in a hip-hop video was in 1999's Hate Me Now by Nas, where Puff Daddy was wearing one. And this was at a time where hip-hop was really starting to set trends and really shape the way that popular culture looks at everything, especially luxury items. Even if you look at today, despite the fact that Franck Muller isn't the hottest watch around, it's still being mentioned. Lil Uzi Vert was saying, "The jeweler made me proud of my wrist. Franck Muller made me proud of my wrist." He was probably too young to even be alive around when Franck Muller was hot. but it still has that staying power. And that's a testament to the impact that his brand made. It's a testament to that relationship in that Franck Muller equals success. One of my favorite lines from the game's debut album, the documentary, is, "Now the game's set in stone, the Franck Muller set in stone, Dre cut me my check and I'm gone." He was talking about the fact that he was able to leave a dangerous environment, an environment of poverty and gang violence, to enjoy success. And the symbol of that was that Franck Muller. And Franck Muller was able to achieve that and embrace it. This was a time when Patek was simply too good for hip-hop, when Rolex was too good for hip-hop. And to a degree, they haven't really embraced that culture. But without getting too philosophical about it, Franck Muller was able to do that and again, set the stage for companies like Richard Mille, which makes a collaboration with Pharrell. For companies like Hublot, which made a collaboration with Jay-Z. Audemars Piguet made collaborations with Jay-Z. Franck Muller was there first, embracing the hip-hop community, and they gave that back. And if you look at every watch that's been hot since the 2000s, it's probably because it's been mentioned in rap lyrics. They may not necessarily start the trend, but they definitely have an undisputable effect on amplifying it. So those are the intangibles as to why Franck Mullers are expensive. But despite what most people may think, there are also a few pretty good tangible reasons as to why they're so expensive. The first one is precious metals. Most Franck Mullers are made in white gold, rose gold, platinum. They do make some steel, titanium, and carbon versions in the vanguards. So obviously that's going to push the price up regardless of what's going on the inside. But in addition to that, all Franck Mullers, regardless of their movement, if they're automatics, they have platinum rotors. And platinum is not only a luxurious material, but it's also more efficient when it comes to working as a rotor because of the fact that it's a heavier, denser material. And also it adds to the price and complexity of making it because you need to get a lot more platinum to work with it because you lose a lot of it in the finishing process and in the shaping. So even though platinum is cheaper than gold as a raw material, you need more of it in order to make anything. So that definitely adds to the pricing. The next tangible reason is there is still a lot of hand crafting going into these. The dials are still hand painted. They're still hand assembling these watches. Even though a lot of their movements are still ETA or Sellita based, they're still being assembled by hand, and that does have its price as well. And then when we talk about movements, while yes, their lower end models do have ETA and Sellita bases, which again, you can argue probably in today's times isn't really worth paying a premium for, but some of their higher end ones, their skeletons, they have that insane Eternas with like 40 something complications in it. That's all made in-house. And there is still some real horological value in watches like that. And one of the reasons why I think Franck Muller gets a lot of flack for not using in-house movements in all their watches is that their slogan is Master of Complication. And that's definitely a bit of a fuck you to anyone who buys something that's an ETA 3-hander with Master of Complications on the back. But if you do look at the higher end of their catalog, there is some real horological value in there in terms of in-house movements, in terms of innovation, craftsmanship, and general complication. And then the last tangible reason is low production numbers. At the end of the day, they don't make a lot of these watches. It's very hard to find two of the same Franck Muller when you're walking around and when you're shopping around, and that's because they don't make very many of them. While we talk about things like Rolex, Patek Philippe, and we talk about scarcity, try finding two of the same Franck Muller. It's a pain in the ass to find, which makes it hard to shop around. However, the downfall is that because these aren't in particularly high demand, there's not much incentive to make more of them. And in addition to that, because they're not in very high demand, they don't really resell for very much. But the advantage to that for us as buyers, of course, is that on the pre-owned market, there's a lot of good deals to be had. There's a lot of markdowns. And that's really where the value is buying a Franck Muller on the secondary market. You can have a lot of benefits because you'll save a lot of money on the retail. If it is an ETA base, it'll be easy to repair. It'll be easy for watchmakers to work on it. So there's a lot of advantages to that as well. But definitely those low production numbers do affect why they are initially expensive, because it means that Franck Muller can't achieve sorts of economies of scale that other companies like Rolex, for example, can. So those are the 5 reasons as to why Franck Muller is so expensive. But let me know in the comments below, why do you think Franck Muller is still expensive? And do you think it's worth it? Do you see the value in some of their higher end pieces? Do you like some of their lower end pieces? Do you think that Franck Muller is still relevant in 2020? I'd love to know in the comments below. And again, a big thanks to Watches Market Dubai for lending in the Franck Muller Crazy Hours featured throughout this video. And if you like the video, please do like it and share it. And of course, if you want to see more pictures of the watches featured in this video, make sure you follow me on Instagram as well. And if you want to see more watch videos, make sure you subscribe to Charles Lusso. In any case, thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.